I had less than 4 hours left to live. Suddenly, the warden stepped into my cell. Mr. Thompson. He looked exhausted, gray hair, heavy eyes, like a man who's seen way too much death in his life. He asked for my last wish. I didn't even blink. I told him, I need to see Rex, my German Shepherd, one last time. Thompson looked shocked. He expected me to ask for a steak dinner or a phone call. But he nodded. He said he'd make it happen. 40 minutes later, I was out in the yard. Just this cold, concrete box surrounded by gray walls, barbed wire everywhere. The morning wind was freezing. It cut right through my orange jumpsuit. I was shivering, staring at the main gates. There was this fancy black SUV parked there, tinted windows, totally out of place for a prison. Leaning against the hood was a guy in a suit. Even from far away I knew who it was. John Harris, the prosecutor, the guy who ruined my life 7 years ago. He fought so hard to get me the death penalty. He acted like I had personally stolen something from him. It didn't surprise me that he was here. Harris was the type of guy who needed to see the end. He had to make sure his version of justice was actually carried out. He wanted to watch me die. Suddenly, the heavy gate clanged open. I spun around, and I saw him. A guard was walking a huge German Shepherd towards me. Rex looked so old. The years had been hard on him. His beautiful black and tan coat was faded. His face was gray, and he was limping bad. That limp, he got that on the worst night of my life, 7 years ago. But his eyes, those smart brown eyes, they were exactly the same. I dropped to my knees. I opened my arms, ready to hug my best friend. This was it, our goodbye. But Rex didn't run to me. He stopped, like 10 feet away. He just froze. The hair on his back stood up, and then, a growl, a low, scary sound. I'd only heard him make that noise twice. It meant he sensed real danger. Rex wasn't looking at me. He was locked onto the gate, looking right at Harris, and he looked absolutely furious. I stood up, totally confused. Rex is a good dog. Trained, calm. He never gets aggressive with strangers for no reason. Never. The guard holding the leash was getting nervous. You could feel the power coming off the dog. Harris stood up straight. He started walking toward us with this smug, arrogant smile. As he got closer, he laughed, a cruel laugh. Done saying goodbye to the mutt? Let's wrap this circus up. Put that rabid animal down. That did it. Rex just snapped. He lunged forward with so much power. The leash flew out of the guard's hand. In a split second, my dog was on him. He knocked Harris to the ground and sank his teeth into his arm. Harris was screaming. The guards panicked and jumped in to pull Rex off. We heard fabric ripping. They dragged Rex back. Harris scrambled up, his face twisted in fear and rage. His expensive suit was ruined, sleeve ripped off, shirt torn, and there, on his bare arm, everyone saw it, a huge, ugly scar. It was old and white, but clear as day. A bite mark from a large animal. A chill went down my spine. I knew that mark. I flashed back to that night, 7 years ago, coming home to find my wife gone, and then Rex showing up a day later, bleeding, limping, with pieces of ripped fabric stuck in his teeth. The police said it was my wife's blood. They said Rex saw me do it, but they were wrong. My voice cut through the silence. Rex came home that night covered in blood. I shouted. He had fabric in his teeth. He bit the killer. That scar, that is my dog's mark on the real murderer. Harris flinched. He tried to cover his arm with the rags of his suit. He looked desperate. That's insane, he yelled. A stray dog bit me at my cabin 3 years ago. This has nothing to do with the case. Warden Thompson stepped in. He was staring hard at the prosecutor's arm. Then Sam, the old guard, who always believed I was innocent, spoke up. Mr. Harris, I remember something. 7 years ago, right after the murder, you took 2 weeks off. Said you fell off a bike. You had a broken arm. I saw the bandages myself at the courthouse. Thompson didn't waste a second. He pulled out his phone. Get me Harris's medical records. Last 10 years. Now, this is the warden. The next 10 minutes felt like 10 years. Harris was pale, sweat dripping down his face. Rex was still growling, eyes locked on him. I couldn't move. My heart was pounding out of my chest. Finally, Thompson's phone rang. He put it on speaker. The hospital admin was loud and clear. Warden, we found a file from 7 years ago. Deep lacerations. Right forearm. Consistent with a large dog bite. Patient refused to file a police report on the animal. Thompson slowly lowered the phone. He looked straight at Harris. I stepped forward. My voice was shaking, but I had to ask. If it was just a stray dog, why didn't you call the cops, Harris? Why were you hiding that well? He had nowhere left to run. And that's how a dog saved my life for hours before execution. Welcome to Shocking Wild Files. It finally hit me. Rex wasn't just attacking. He was protecting my wife from you. Harris tried to argue, but he didn't get the chance. Rex bolted forward again. But this time, he went straight for the prosecutor's black SUV. The guard didn't see it coming. Rex was all over that car. He started clawing at the trunk, barking like crazy. He was biting the bumper, desperate to get inside. It was like he knew something was hidden in there. I screamed out, "Check the car." He found something. Harris turned ghost white. Total panic. He rushed the SUV, yelling about private property. But Warden Thompson wasn't having it. He marched over, hand on his holster. "This is prison grounds, Harris. I am the law here. Open the trunk now, or we break it open." Harris was shaking as he hit the button. The lid popped up slowly. Inside, 2 massive, leather suitcases, packed tight. It looked like the prosecutor was planning a one-way trip. One of the guards asked, "Going somewhere, Mr. Prosecutor?" Harris tried to play it cool, but his voice cracked. Just a vacation. I'm flying to Europe after this case is closed. These are just personal items." But Rex wasn't buying it. He jumped right into the trunk, sniffing the bags with frantic energy. Suddenly, he bit down on a side pocket, tearing right through the leather. Harris lunged forward, screaming, "Get that mutt away!" But the guards held him back. Rex pulled something, small and shiny, from the ripped pocket. It fell from his mouth and hit the pavement with a clink, right at Warden Thompson's feet. Thompson bent down. He picked up a silver locket on a thin chain. It was old, slightly tarnished, but I recognized it instantly. Thompson opened it, and his face just dropped. Inside was a tiny photo, faded, but clear enough. It was my wife, smiling. I knew that locket better than anything. I gave it to her on our wedding anniversary. It vanished the night she was murdered. The police never found it. Thompson slowly turned to Harris, holding the evidence in his palm. His voice was cold as ice. "Mr. Prosecutor, you claim the robber stole everything. You handled the pawn shop investigation yourself.
Take a look at this.
So explain to me, why is the victim's jewelry in your luggage? Why have you had this for 7 years? And why are you trying to flee the country with it today?" Right on the day of the execution, I watched Harris crumble. His shoulders slumped. His hands just hung there. When he looked up, the arrogance was gone. It was just pure, ugly defeat. He looked at me. His eyes were full of hate, despair, and relief, like he was tired of carrying the lie. Then, he snapped. "She didn't deserve a loser like you," he screamed. "I loved her since college. I offered her the world, money, power, status, and she chose you, a pathetic engineer with a tiny salary." She laughed at me. She said I disgusted her. He went quiet, breathing hard. Then he whispered, like he was talking to himself, "I went to see her that night. I knew you were gone. I begged for a chance, but she rejected me again. Said she never loved me, never would. She told me to get out. I just lost it. I grabbed a knife from the table. I didn't mean to." She was screaming, trying to run. Then that damn dog came out of nowhere. It attacked me, bit my arm. I grabbed something heavy and bashed its head in. I thought I killed it. It ran out the window. I thought it died in the woods. Two guards slammed Harris against the car, cuffing him tight. Thompson was already on the radio, calling the police and demanding a mistrial. It all happened so fast, I couldn't process it. Was this real, or just another dream I'd had in my cell 1,000 times? Rex walked over to me, totally calm now. He nudged my hand with his gray snout, tail wagging slowly. I dropped to my knees. Right there in the yard, I buried my face in his fur. And that's when the tears finally came. Tears of relief, of joy, of gratitude. This dog, this loyal soul, he remembered everything. He waited for his moment. 7 long years. 3 hours later, I wasn't waiting for the chair. I was walking out the front door. An emergency court order set me free immediately. Full exoneration. Thompson personally walked me out. He apologized for the lost years and promised to help with compensation. The massive gates creaked open. I took my first step as a free man. The asphalt felt warm under my feet. Rex was right beside me. He was limping a little, but his head was held high. A proud dog. We grabbed a taxi. Sam paid for it. I told the driver to take us straight to the city cemetery. 20 minutes later, we were there, standing over her simple gray stone. I laid down a bouquet of white roses I bought on the way. We won, honey, I whispered. Rex found him. We got justice. I'm sorry it took so long, but we never gave up. We never forgot you. Rex sat down on the damp grass. He rested his chin on my knee. We just sat there in silence. 2 survivors. 2 souls who loved her more than anything. The autumn wind blew through the leaves, but I wasn't cold. I was free. I was vindicated, and I had my best friend. You know, loyalty isn't measured in years. It's not about distance. True loyalty lives in the heart. It remembers. It waits, and it never surrenders. Today, the loyalty of an old dog with a gray face saved my life. It proved one thing: justice doesn't always come from a judge. Sometimes, it comes from a faithful heart that never forgot the truth.